What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and today we are doing our hype video for the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC Championship ball game at Sunday. We're going to do the top 10 things. We're actually only going to do 9 because the final point is going to kind of be where I'm at mentally, my hype for this game, and laying everything out on the table because we're one game away from the Super Bowl, baby. I'm re-recording this for like the third time because last times it's gone over like 20 minutes, so we're going to try to condense it a little bit. So point number 10 for this matchup is it's going to be a defensive battle. What defense can prevail? It's pretty much, in my opinion, the Philadelphia Eagles front seven going up against the Minnesota Vikings defense of secondary. You know, they don't play each other, but I think the strength right now, I think the Philadelphia Eagles front seven going up against the Minnesota Vikings offensive line is not good for Minnesota. If I'm a Viking fan, that is the #1 worry that I have, because late in that game, pretty much the entirety of the second half, the Saints were getting home on Case Keenum, and they were just, you know, an arm shy or just not enough effort to get and lay a hit on him. Philadelphia hit the quarterback more than any team in the NFL, and if the script and the storylines that we saw and the play from the Minnesota Vikings in that divisional round game carry over, it is going to be a long day for Case Keenum, a long day for whatever running back they want to stick back there. And then on the other side, when you look at the Minnesota Vikings defense, you have Nick Foles, a quarterback that's looking like he's getting a little bit of momentum, kind of heating up a little bit. But if you look at the Nick Foles that played against the Raiders and the Cowboys for a half, or a quarter really, that is, he cannot make those kind of throws and expect not to get punished from the Vikings secondary. They have two absolute studs in Harrison Smith and Xavier Rhodes. And you might even want to say, even though the Falcons defense was incredibly hot, probably the hottest defense outside of Philadelphia entering the playoffs, those couple fluky plays that weren't punished, the deflection that went to Torrey Smith, and we had a couple other ones, Minnesota's going to make you punish on those. They're going to take that one to the house. They're going to put that in scoring position instead of the offense. So we cannot have that. This is going to be a defensive battle, and what can take over, the Vikings secondary or the Philadelphia Eagles front seven? Point number 9 is Alshon Jeffrey plays very, very well throughout his career against the Minnesota Vikings. I saw a stat that said he has more touchdowns versus the Vikings than any other team in his career. Obviously, as a member of the Bears, they played him twice a year. I looked into the stats. He has 9 career games. He has 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. So that is very, very good. He had a 200-yard game, I think, in 2014. You know, you look at this and you're kind of thinking, all right, we got to kind of assume that Alshon's not going to have a big game because you're going to have a true, proven shutdown, lockdown corner and Xavier Rhodes on him. He's got his against Xavier Rhodes. Obviously, all those games were, some of them were before Xavier Rhodes was drafted, but you know, there was definitely some big time matchups there, and Alshon has been able to get his against Xavier Rhodes. It's not trying to say like, you know, Alshon Jeffrey's his kryptonite or anything like that, but I think from me, before I looked into this, I was like, all right, well, someone else is gonna have to make plays because you got to figure Alshon's gonna be kept quiet all night by Xavier Rhodes. The facts, the stats don't exactly prove that. So that is good because, you know, not Carson Wentz, obviously. Oh, it hurts every time. But Nick Foles needs to target Alshon Jeffrey more. And knowing that Alshon can make plays against his Vikings defense, it's positive. We need all the ammunition we can get. And sticking on the wide receivers at point 8. My matchup, when I look at the offense, what one guy can take the game over, maybe my sleeper pick, I think it's going to be Nelson Agholor out the slot. They're going to have Terrence Newman in there. He's old. He's slow. He's only thing he has is IQ, an incredibly high IQ. He still can play, but I mean, if you're going from an athlete to athlete, if you get too cute, he's gonna sniff it out and make a play and punish you. Terrence Newman will. But if you just have him, just straight up, Agholor lines up in front of him, and it's man-to-man coverage or anything like that, he will beat him every time. Agholor was our most explosive player against the Atlanta Falcons, and when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles offense, Agholor is the guy I want to try to get involved early and often out of the slot. I think that is a very, very nice matchup. A bad matchup, which is, we're going to talk about at point 7, is Big V going up against Everson Griffen. Everson Griffen is, you know, Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player, and probably the most feared player on the Minnesota Vikings defense. Most feared. I think you can probably give the best player overall to Harrison Smith. But he's a beast, man, and going up against Big... Oh, yeah, that's just another adversity. Oh, Crimea River Vikings. Oh, we lost Dalvin Cook, who played like a couple good games. Running backs are replaceable. You know what's not replaceable? A goddamn all-pro tackle that's a Hall of Famer in Jason Peters. But we have found a way to adapt, overcome and adapt, just like we've done with Carson Wentz, Jordan Hicks, Darren Sproles, Chris Maragos, our starting kicker, everything. And Big V has done serviceable. Big V's gone up against some great defensive ends and has held his own in a lot of occasions. And the only positive right now, when you look at this, you're like, Everson Griffen is going to absolutely eat Big V's lunch. Big V struggles against speed rushers. Power rushers, he has a chance because he's a big mauler type guy. Everson Griffen is much more of, he's complete, but when you look at his skill set, he's more of a power rusher than a finesse rusher. That's more so Danielle Hunter on the other side, who's going to get absolutely shut out by Lane Johnson, my prediction. So the only kind of reassuring thing is Big V. If you had to have Big V go up against a all-pro type defensive end, give me a power guy. And that is kind of the way Everson Griffin is. So hopefully, you know, regardless, we should have tight ends chipping. We should have running backs helping him out. You don't want to leave Big V out on an island. But if there is certain plays where we just simply can't help him out, he has to hold his own. A much better matchup is a power rusher, which is what Everson Griffin predominantly is. Moving on to point number 6 is, for the love of God, stick with Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement. Everyone knows I hate Deuce Staley. I want Deuce Staley fired. I want Deuce Staley, maybe not necessarily fired, but fired from his running back rotation. He is the guy that controls when running backs coming in and out. It is unbelievably frustrating. Last week, Jay Ajayi basically didn't play the second quarter, the entirety, and we had LeGarrette Blount out there. Jay Ajayi had 10 carries for 50 yards. LeGarrette Blount had, I think he had 9 carries for 5 yards or something crazy like that. LeGarrette Blount should only be played within the 5 yards in the red zone, 5 yards out, or you're trying to kill off a game in the fourth quarter. Those are the only scenarios when LeGarrette Blount should be playing. Alvin Kamara against the Saints can be and should be the model for how the Philadelphia Eagles want to use Corey Clement. Corey Clement is an absolute beast, and we need to get him much more involved in the offense, and he needs to eat into some of LeGarrette Blount's carries, and not just catching. Have him run the ball. He's incredibly explosive. I don't think he's fumbled all year. Give him the ball. And we look at Jay Ajayi, obviously he had that crushing fumble in the first drive against Atlanta, but other than that, he had outside of Nelson Aguilar's occasional big plays, he was the second most explosive player in the offense, and he was getting positive yards. Stop rotating our guys. I don't know if Deuce Staley finds LeGarrette Blount cute, or they has some pictures on him or something like that LeGarrette Blount's holding over his head to get some snaps. But for the love of God, stop ruining the momentum of our drives by pulling our hot running backs and sticking LeGarrette Blount in there to get a 2-yard momentum killer. God. Point number 5. Nick Foles versus Case Keenum. There's no way you're going to not talk about this matchup of former Rams quarterbacks. And ultimately, it's going to be which one of these guys can make fewer mistakes. You go with momentum, you're probably giving the edge to Case Keenum because obviously maybe the Minnesota Vikings squeezed out all their luck to get that win against the Saints. But that play is going to definitely give them a lot of momentum. But don't act like Nick Foles doesn't. Everyone can count it out. The Philadelphia Eagles are the first home underdog in NFL history. And Nick Foles had a very, very clean game. I think he completed 70-80% of his passes. Really high QBR, 200 yards, no turnovers. That is the exact kind of game he needs to have against this Minnesota Vikings defense for us to get into the next round. I think when push comes to shove, if you told me right now, you either can have Nick Foles or Case Keenum as your quarterback, it could be by bias, completely biased. I'm taking Nick Foles. Nick Foles has better arm talent. That's it. I'm taking Nick Foles in this matchup between the two. How it will play out, it's whatever guy can make the least amount of mistakes. I'm not going to say Nick Foles is going to be that guy, but I hope he is. But that is up to debate. Surely you can debate who you'd rather, Nick Foles or Case Keenum. Going to point number 4 is that the Eagles secondary is very, very hot right now. They absolutely took over against the Atlanta Falcons. Sure, Julio Jones looked good between the 20s, but when it came up to all those yards, didn't amass the points, so it doesn't really matter. They shut him down when it mattered and when it counted in the red zone on the final drive. Jalen Mills, who's a safety playing corner, is on fire right now. Our secondary, Malcolm Jenkins, who I've said countless times has had his worst year as a Philadelphia Eagles, has turned it up the last couple weeks, which is great to see. Rodney McLeod's play has definitely stepped up, especially tackling in the run game. And Darby's playing well. He's not biting as much. So this secondary is very, very hot. But when you look at the Minnesota Vikings, how do you stop their offense? They run these slants that cause just confusion. It's pick plays. They have guys just always constantly by design running into each other, and that's how the wide receivers know. They're like, all right, these guys, we're going to try to make it so these two corners will, or the linebacker and the corner will trip into each other, and Diggs will be free, or Wright will be free, or Thielen will be free. They need to game plan for this. And if there's one criticism of the Philadelphia Eagles defense, is what we saw against the Giants. When we played the Giants the first time, they constantly just threw the ball, 2 seconds, step, drop back, quick slant, quick slant, quick slant. Then we went in the second game against the Giants, same thing, and our defense looked unprepared once again. And if that's something that, if it seems like they want to run their own plan, they don't want to understand and realize what the opposing offense is going to bring and game plan to that. They kind of want to do, which is, it's admirable, but they're going to go, we're going to run this defense, and the offense is going to have to adapt to what the defense is doing. And that's always not the case, and that is my biggest fear when I look at the Minnesota Vikings offense. Pat Shurmur, this is the reason why. Pat Shurmur has found a way to make this offense get to where they are, which is he got a head coaching job with the Giants out of this. And it is primarily designed by quick slants, quick throws for Case Keenum to make, and a lot of it is because it causes confusion amongst the secondary. It causes guys to run into each other. Please, for the love of God, Analyze this, understand this, and stop it. Going to point number 3 quickly is Nick Foles can't miss deep. I think the chemistry that he had coming out of the Falcons game is a plus, but there was a couple throws in the first half that could have been gains of 30 yards, maybe even a touchdown or longer, that Nick Foles just simply overthrown. He didn't look in rhythm in the first quarter, really for most of the first half. That can't happen. You cannot afford to have a slow start in this game against the Vikings. So Nick Foles, you hear me, dog? Play good. Point number 2. Doug Peterson is Coach of the Year. I'm late on the train. I've been heavily critical of Doug Peterson all season long. You know, I don't think Coach of the Year, like the voting counts, playoffs or not. He's Coach of the Year. There's Sean McVay. We beat him. He's out of the race. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the Rams when they're both in the same spot when we finished the game with a backup quarterback. You got Mike Zimmer. What adversity did they face? They didn't come from last in the division to go to first place in the NFL. They did not do that. So you have to give it to Doug Peterson, and he's going to have to prove it on Sunday night why he is in fact the Coach of the Year, why he is able to find a way to win with all of the holes on this offense. No other coach in the playoffs has had to deal with even half of the adversity that Doug Peterson had, from player personnel to injuries, and he's somehow, we're one game, he has this team one game away from making the Super Bowl, and his halftime adjustments have absolutely incredible. And really, like I said, the only criticism I have against the offense is Deuce Staley's running back rotation. That doesn't really fall on Doug. I guess maybe it does, because clearly he's like, why the hell? Doug should probably go, why is Jay sitting on the bench? Why is Garrett Blount out there? I guess he hasn't had that moment yet. But ultimately, man, I want to see what Doug Peterson comes up with a game plan. And, you know, trying to prove if you can get this team to the Super Bowl, it's one of the best coaching performances of all time throughout an entire season. And this is Doug Peterson, the uninspiring Andy Reid yes man hire, Doug Peterson. I will admit I was wrong. Hope you accept my apology. All right, now it's time for my closing rant. How I feel about this game, how I feel about this season up to this point. Let's go. Once again, the Philadelphia Eagles are home field underdogs. Number 1 seed. No one's given them a chance. There's a reason why there's those German Shepherd masks that are already sold out. They're going to, absolutely fill Lincoln Financial Field on Sunday. And when you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, the only people that really give them a shot is everyone that's in this fan base. Outside of this fan base, you're not going to hear a boo. You know why? Because it's a feel-good story. It's a feel-good story for the Minnesota Vikings, who, came from a, good defense, but, team to where they are. They're hosting the Super Bowl. They have a goddamn 100-year-old Milli Vanilli something chick that they want to get her to the Super Bowl. And morale's high. They came off and won the greatest comeback victories in Super Bowl history. Probably play of the franchise for Minnesota Vikings when all is said and done. There is no way that anyone wants the Philadelphia Eagles to win outside of this. And it is time to embody what everyone thinks the Philadelphia Eagles fans are. A bunch of assholes. A bunch of cynical, just hateful, mean-spirited, violent, disoriented individuals. I want, more than anything, to see that 100-year-old lady just bawl her eyes out when she finds out that the Minnesota Vikings lost against the Philadelphia Eagles and they're not going to the Super Bowl. That would make my year, seeing that lady's face when that happens, because too many times the Philadelphia Eagles have been upon the jokes. Both these teams embody disappointments in the playoffs. The Vikings have had their own fair share of hardships. Same with the Philadelphia Eagles. But ultimately, we're going for Millie's neck. Millie, you better watch your neck. We're coming for it. When you look at this Philadelphia Eagles team, man, there is no team that has faced this kind of adversity and overcame the kind of adversity that the Philadelphia Eagles have overcome. Looking just within our division, you had Dak Prescott go from every commercial, taking over Cam Newton's sponsorship with the yogurt, and all the hype. Offensive Rookie of the Year, he is taking it over. You had him lose his boyfriend Ezekiel Elliott, and they fell off the face of the earth. They lost one player, and they had Shawn Lee out for a couple games, and they were absolute garbage throughout the season. You had the Giants, who had a thinner offensive line than LeBron's hairline, and Odell, when they went down, done for the season. They're going to have to pick a brand new quarterback. They have to change everything. Cleared house. They were terrible. Philadelphia lost our MVP quarterback late. We lost our All-Pro Hall of Fame tackle mid-season. We lost maybe the best receiving back in the NFL, all-purpose back. Maybe we'll say all-purpose back, because there's some pretty good receiving backs. Le'Veon Bell, David Johnson, in Darren Sproles. We lost our best special teamer who's been a Pro Bowler in Chris Marigold. We lost our starting kicker, Caleb Sturgis. We lost Jordan Hicks, the leader of our defense, the guy that called the plays. And we are one game away from the Super Bowl. Don't tell me that the Minnesota Vikings are underdogs. Don't tell me that they deserve to win because A, B, and C. The Philadelphia Eagles have overcome more adversity than any team in the NFL, and we are still here standing ready for one more round. When you think of all the things that encompass ups and downs of the season, I could not be more proud of this Philadelphia Eagles team. Then I think this is my favorite Philadelphia Eagles team. Ultimately, if we don't win the Super Bowl, it's going to come down to, man, what if we had Carson Wentz? It could have been our year. You know what I'm saying? Like, every single guy on this team has given their heart and soul. They busted their asses every single day, every single game to get to where we are. And still, if they lose, it's going to be like, man, I'm disappointed. What if we had Wentz? Well, here's the way we can end this, is that win or lose against them, it's going to be a tough game. I don't know if I would bet the house on Philadelphia. I personally feel in my gut that the Eagles are going to win this game. But I wouldn't surprise me. Minnesota is a very, very talented team, and they have a whole lot of momentum behind their side. But for Eagle fans, win or lose, even if we win the Super Bowl somehow, some way, after the hype all settles down, this is only the beginning. Carson Wentz. This team, despite losing our MVP quarterback, is a game away from the Super Bowl. What if we had Carson Wentz? We would be the most feared team in the NFL. We would be favorites. We'd probably open up at 7-point favorites against the New England Patriots if they can find a way to the Super Bowl. This is only the beginning. When Carson Wentz comes back, gets in that huddle for the Philadelphia Eagles, we are getting ready to take over the NFL for the next 10 to 15 years. It is time for teams like the Seattle Seahawks, the Legion of Boom. They're getting older. They're moving on. You got Drew Brees. He's getting older. He's only got maybe a year or two left. He's moving on. Aaron Rodgers struggling to stay healthy. Is that the end of the Packers? Are they going to have to do some reshuffling, some big major moves? We saw in their front office. That's shaky. Who is going to be the next team in the NFC that's going to be the perennial playoff contender at the start of every season? They are opening up as Super Bowl favorites. That is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles. This is only the beginning. That does it for me today, guys. I hope you guys are very hyped for this NFC Championship ball game on Sunday. You know I am. I'll probably have player grades out really, really late because I'll be out. Maybe winner. Well, I mean, obviously, the neutrals that watch it want to see them lose in my reaction. But I can't wait for that. Hope you guys are all ready. Be safe. Drink responsibly. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace out.